Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. I told myself I wouldn't get hurt again. That after the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes, after we were told he was on a plane, after I welled up with emotions, thinking about how a sport I love was going to be drastically transformed in the country that I love. Only to find out that it was like a Dragon's Den guy or something on that plane. Dragon's Den or one of the Shark Tank. He was a Shark Tank guy. It was him on that plane. It was what was the George Bush quote? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Can't get fooled again. That was me. I won't get fooled again. The Juan Soto stuff happened, and for the most part, kept it cool. Didn't get too high, didn't get too low. Fairly never really truly believed. And especially since a lot of that reporting quickly became, sure, they're kicking tires, but the idea that they're going to spend $50 million a season on Juan Soto before they get Vladdy and Bo done seems a little far-fetched. Now they've got Vladdy done. Now they made a World Series run. Little did I know, by the way, that even though they didn't get Shohei Ohtani, that baseball would be transformed in this country shortly after what was one of the most heartbreaking moments I can remember as a sports fan, truly. Like, not having Shohei Ohtani on that plane was devastating. Easily top 10 crushing sports moments that I've had, and it did not involve a game. And now we're deep in the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes. And again, I told myself, listen, after they signed Okamoto, I went through, as I described them, I think on the show, but maybe just to friends in private. It was almost stages of grief. Because it's not that I didn't come around on Okamoto. It's just that I didn't know who he was before they signed him. And they gave him a $60 million contract. And I looked at that and said, all right, so they've now signed 4 free agents. They've spent more money than anybody. They're deep into the CBT. The roster looks plenty full. There's already question marks in terms of who gets to play and when they get to play. So are they really going to be in on either of these guys? Is this really going to happen? And my brain went to probably not. This is probably an indicator that the Jays are maybe not done in free agency, that guys could fall into their laps, but that they would be an aggressive team. I don't know. It would have to be a certain perfect scenario where Kyle Tucker's market doesn't materialize. If you would have told me, hey, somebody's going to offer him potentially $200 million over 4 years with opt-outs, I would have said, yeah, they're just not going to be able to match that. They're not likely to go into a 10-year deal where the numbers are 35 a year plus or somewhere around there in order to acquire this guy, given their financial circumstances and the fact that they do have a baseball team that their general manager has come out and said he likes it. I believe them when they say they like their team, that they're confident that they've got one of the best teams in the American League and that they feel bullish that they could repeat as American League champions and set themselves up for another crack at a World Series. But now we've had the reporting from the last 48 hours, and more specifically the last 24, where it really does feel now as though we're down to Mets, Dodgers, Blue Jays. Everybody's saying the same thing. The Mets have gotten aggressive with a short-term deal. The assumption is if that is the deal, that the Dodgers would happily jump in the mix. That the Dodgers would look at that and go, yeah, we can make that work. Short-term deal, we're there. And would you like to come to Los Angeles? Would you like to come play for the World Series champions? Would you like to slot in a lineup that is full of absolute killers? Potentially win a World Series? And then there are the Blue Jays, who, by all accounts, are getting aggressive with this guy. And I'm just, again, reading the tea leaves here. I'm following along with all of the same insiders that you are, and I'm doing a couple of extra texts here and there. But, yeah, I got the same stuff as you. But it really does seem as though the Toronto Blue Jays, a group that we sort of assumed was not going to get uber aggressive for Kyle Tucker is getting pretty aggressive for Kyle Tucker. You've got Jeff Passan going on with McAuliffe last night saying the Blue Jays are the only team that might be offering him 10 years on a contract. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you counter the 4-year, $200 million that the Mets might be offering with no deferrals. You got to get up in the real money. And some people have said, and again, you take it with a grain of salt because who really knows the inner workings of Kyle Tucker? Probably a very small select group of people. But there are some reports that this guy is not in love with the idea of having another free agent year, that he is looking for security. And if you are just trying to read the tea leaves, if someone offers you 4 years, $200 million, that means they're offering you a chance to be the highest paid player in baseball along with your teammate Juan Soto. That's a hard thing to deny. $50 million with opt-outs. If you get a 4-year deal at $50 million per, you're insulated to have bad seasons. And you also have the luxury of, if you put together a good year, but then have an amazing season the following, you can opt out and go to free agency with the thought somebody's likely going to give you the long-term contract that you always coveted and that you always desired, but while making maybe $100 million before you do so. It's tempting. It has to be. So much so that the fact that he has not signed yet, I would think, indicates the Toronto Blue Jays are very alive in this. And now the hope is through the roof. And now I'm right back to where I started, which is you got to get Kyle Tucker or you got to get Bo Bichette. You can't come into this offseason without one of those two. And despite this being an incredible offseason in terms of spending for the Blue Jays, a validation of the fans who showed up at that ballpark and bought all the merchandise, had the lineups going all the way up the tunnel, who paid those ticket prices, who bought the $20 beers, who were clamoring for tickets, who pumped in television ratings, who filled bars to watch these games, who became completely enamored with this baseball team. The organization decided to give back, and they said, yep, we're going to spend money. But now, yeah, this is now officially going to hurt if they don't land Kyle Tucker. Maybe they circle back on Bo Bichette if they don't land him. He hasn't signed with the Phillies yet, as much as those reports seem to be, hey, this guy's really loving this team and their Zoom chats are going great. And God, he fits their culture and blah, blah, blah. I've become a scrolling man. Yet again, I'm glued to Twitter and I can't get off of it. And I'm really hoping that this breaks during the show today because I love news and I'm just really hoping that he ends up with the Toronto Blue Jays. The biggest winner so far in this, well, I guess it's not the home game, but it's Mitch Marner, a guy who does not really love attention because the attention that he gets, well, actually, that's not true. He likes a certain kind of attention. He doesn't mind being in an advertisement. He doesn't mind it if you're going to interview him before a game and you're the Vegas Golden Knights rinkside reporter asking him, what do you got to do to come together to get 2 points tonight? And he says, got to roll lines 1 through 4, get pucks in deep, make smart plays, blah, blah, blah. But the negative attention, he clearly is not a big fan of. I've seen this time and time and time again, and it resulted in one of the main reasons why he ended up leaving Toronto. And now, because of this Kyle Tucker stuff, he almost becomes a secondary storyline today, despite him being one of the best, if not the best, Toronto Maple Leaf to ever just leave the organization, especially when he was offered a contract extension. When the Leafs were looking to pay the local kid handsomely, he decided to exit. And there are varying opinions on this, but here's mine. Today, all I'm thinking about is the past. As much as I'm excited for the game tonight, I'm thrilled to see how the Maple Leafs are going to play him, what the level of animosity is between he and the other players, how we will judge the outcome, given that the Maple Leafs desperately need 2 points, and they are facing this guy, and they flew into Vegas yesterday and have been able to rest up after laying an egg against the Utah Mammoth. I'm thinking about the breakup. When I was a kid, the last thing on earth I wanted was for my parents to get divorced. It was my biggest fear. I couldn't stand the idea of it. Oh, how I wanted them to stay together. Divorce was a nightmare for me. It was change. It was, I didn't know how I was going to react to something like that. And then I got older. And I stopped looking at it like a child, and my perspective shifted. And I went, it probably would have been better if my parents got divorced earlier. Probably would have been happier. Probably would have been better for all parties involved. And that's the way that I feel about Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs. That they looked at their relationship the way that a child does. Fear of change, fear of what if. And it cost them. And it ended up in this place where it's ugly now. It's unbelievably ugly. You can say it's not because there's a few Marner diehards or there's some few sympathetic parties to this situation. But the point I'm trying to make here is that this wasn't all just Mitch Marner. This was also the Toronto Maple Leafs and their fear of change, their childish way of looking at that relationship. It seemed for years that when they had control of being able to move Mitch Marner, they were terrified at the idea that if they moved him, it was somehow telegraphing to the world that they were what the outsiders said they were, a group that would give up on talent, a group that would smack a gift horse in the mouth, that they didn't believe in skill. And God forbid you believe in anything other than just skill. Despite all the failures, despite all the indicators like a hometown kid trying to push you over a barrel during an RFA negotiation and threatening to leave and not showing up to day one of training camp, despite all of the exits, the difficult exits that this team had, where, frankly, he was a no-show in a lot of these big games. And it wasn't all on him. It was a lot of those other guys, too. He'll take more ire now because he's the one who left. But that they were so reluctant to look at it through change. So it's important to remember that when you look at this tonight, and yeah, Nick Waugh has become a fan favorite. He's a great fit for this organization. He's provided them with center depth that this team has not had under the current iteration of this group of players. But instead of finding a way to move Mitch Marner earlier, instead of being adults about it and realizing that, hey, this isn't working and everyone involved is better with an amicable split, they pushed it further down the line. They added more tension. They made it uglier. And it, frankly, did not work out. I guess it did work out for Mitch Marner because he's on a first-place team and he's in the West and he's in first place. But I would also say even for his legacy, it didn't really work out because nothing would have been better for him than to be able to return home and be celebrated as a hero or as a sympathetic figure, and now he isn't one. So while Marner will get the barbs tonight, it's important to remember that the organization played their part as well. Jackie Redmond of TNT and WWE joins me now. What's up, Jackie? How we doing? Good morning.
Oh, good morning. You just know Mitch Marner is absolutely dreading this game tonight. Like
Yeah.
I feel like he is absolutely hates that he has to play this game tonight. I saw last night someone tweeted out that he said, "Oh, I haven't thought about it till this very minute." And I was like, "That's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Liar told you that." Like that is an absolute 100% lie. You've
Yeah,
thought
that's
about
liars who lie.
this. That's like not even a good lie. Like come up with a better lie. Yeah, he's dreading it. Of course, why wouldn't he be dreading it? You nailed it off the top of the show, which is that if there's one thing that Mitch Marner hates, it's negative attention
Mm-hmm.
or his own decisions or play or anything of that nature being criticized even slightly, deserved or not. So, yeah, he hates this. He absolutely hates it. I love it. I'm so excited. I actually can't wait to watch it.
I'm still more curious to see what happens when he returns home
Of
because he's
course.
going
Of
to get the
course.
video tribute and it's going to be a spot where his teammates are forced to show some sportsmanship. And the teammates, I don't think you're allowed to criticize them for doing the stick tap on the boards
No,
or,
they have to. They
yeah,
have
like
to.
that's just good sportsmanship. That's nothing. But yesterday I had Frank Krupe on Hockey Illuminati, and we were talking about how, to me, one of the most important things from this game, maybe even more important than the 2 points, is the way they interact with him on the ice. Because there has been a fan disconnect for years between the players and the fan base. And if those guys are being overly friendly and it's a lot of jokes, then I don't think that people are going to love that. I think people are going to look at it and say, that sucks. That stinks. You got to treat him like he is very much an opponent. And hopefully, ideally, there are some moments where they try to get physical with him and throw him off his game because that has worked with him in the past. And so, yeah, tonight is layered in terms of the points of intrigue. But for you, what is the biggest question mark going into tonight?
Well, I'll just say this. to what you're talking about in terms of the interaction between him and his former teammates. The one good thing about the scheduling of this coming on the second half of a back-to-back is that we don't have to watch the game tonight and hear the inevitable report about Matthews and Marner having dinner the night before and catching up like old buddies. Cause like, I do not want to hear that. I don't want to hear about them yucking it up and being like, oh man, you passed Sundin, which I'm upset about still. Like I haven't actually, fun fact, I have not watched the celebration of Matthews passing Sundin because I still am not ready. I'm not ready. In my realm of reality, that hasn't happened yet. Like I purposely have not watched that content. I was actually supposed to be on that game for TNT, and the hockey gods were looking out for me because I got moved to something else and couldn't do it. But I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but yeah, I haven't accepted that yet. But yeah, we don't have to kind of hear about how they hung out the night before and this is where their relationship's at and all of this. We can actually just focus on the game. And this is a big game for the Leafs. So yeah, I think it would be really stupid if some of those guys went out there and are talking to Marner at center ice or, just being friendly or doing anything that resembles not being completely focused on the game and getting 2 points so that they can make the playoffs. From Marner's side of things, I mean, one thing that kind of surprises me, and I've paid close attention to Marner this season, not just because he's a former Leaf, but because he's on my fantasy team, and he's not having a bad year. He's not having, he's having a good year. Like, but he's good. But I do think that when I thought about Marner going to Vegas, I was like, oh man, like this is gonna make Vegas an absolute wagon. They are gonna be so good, and they've had some injuries, I know, but he hasn't had the impact in Vegas that I anticipated he would, even with the adjustments and the moving and what everyone likes to point that stuff out. He's one of the best players in the league. Like that stuff shouldn't really matter. And I find it kind of fascinating that he's playing center, that he's been moved all over the lineup, that it hasn't really completely worked when he's played with Jack Eichel. And on the power play, like people like to talk about the Leafs power play at the start of the year and how horrible it was and how, they missed Mitch Marner there. And of course they did, but like he has kind of been not a huge factor on Vegas's power play. He's on it, obviously, but he hasn't really done a whole lot. I know this because power play points is a category in my league, and Marner is not racking them up. He's not that involved. And so it's interesting to me that he hasn't had quite the impact that I would have expected for him going to such a established team that has won and knows what it takes to win and has a lot more talent than the Toronto Maple Leafs are currently dealing with. So yeah, I'm curious to kind of see how the rest of the season plays out for him, and the playoffs especially. But I like that we might get like a Matthews Marner face-off tonight. I think that's kind of interesting visually, and I hope that they're not like smiling at each other when they do it. Like kind of, I hope it's mean. I hope they're mean mugging each other. I hope it's like, it's got to be mean. It's got to be nasty. I mean, I know. I don't know if you've watched Heated Rivalry. I have, but like they were lovers and they were, okay. So it's about two gay hockey players who are like having a secret love affair, but they're rivals. And when they play each other, like they're not being nice. Like they're like Rosenhoff is taking it to Shane. He's giving it to him. Yeah. And so I want that same energy. Like if two lovers can hate each other on the ice, then two former teammates absolutely should, especially when Marner just pieced out on everybody because it was too hard. It's too hard.
If it can happen in a scripted television show, it certainly can
happen in real life. That's right. That is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So here's where I'm at with a couple of things you said. One is, I'm not expecting these guys to not be friends anymore. Okay. Like if they're friendly with one another and they're still friends and they hang out in the off season, who cares? Like if Matthews goes and skates with Marner in the off season and they've maintained a relationship, I think it's unrealistic to expect that it's going to be 1990s sports or like, Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce with Ray Allen when he went to the Miami Heat and they said, we're never talking to you again. And just immediately.
I miss that.
I do too. That. Listen, I do, but I'm just saying that I understand what the ask, or people should understand what the ask is here. I don't care if you two still know each other, if you're friendly with one another, if you still maintain a friendship. Like the idea that that would be automatically severed because the guy left, I know is unrealistic. But you have to understand that optics matter. And to your point about the dinner thing, like when Marner returns to Toronto, the last thing you can have is a photo of Marner, Riley, Matthews, and Nylander all sitting down to a dinner together and posting like past us Thursday before they
Yeah.
play Friday night. Cannot happen. You just cannot do
That's
it.
hilarious.
And I like as much as I just referenced something that feels like it's more from the past, you know, we just saw Mikko Rantanen get traded by the Colorado Avalanche. And he wanted to stick it to the Avs, and he did stick it to the Avs. And
it was one of the greatest games of the whole year. Like people
100%.
loved it on both sides.
Yep.
People loved it. Even the people that hated it loved it.
They absolutely did. And it became must-see TV in the postseason. And what ended up happening was Mikko Rantanen turned it on to a degree where he essentially single-handedly buried his former hockey club in a season where they had Stanley Cup aspirations. Amazing theater and amazing for Dallas fans because they go, hey, this guy hates them. This guy's so desperate to elevate his game because they gave up on him. And conversely, yes, there was no trade. The Leafs did try to trade Mitch Marner because he didn't want to sign a contract extension. So for him, I would hope anyways, that he actually does treat it like, hey, these guys tried to trade me. That maybe I would have signed with the Maple Leafs had they not come to me in the 11th hour when my wife was pregnant and said, and put me under the gun to sign an extension. I would have.
I don't buy that.
Of course I don't buy that. No one buys that. I'm just saying that for him, I want to see that level of intensity against the Maple Leafs. But conversely, like to the extend the Mikko Rantanen thing, Mitch Marner gave up on your hockey team. He gave up on playing with Austin Matthews, a guy that set up more assists than anybody throughout Matthews' goal scoring record, decided, I don't want to play on your wing anymore. I'm going to go play in Las Vegas. He decided that I don't want to play with William Nylander. I don't believe that this formula can work to win a Stanley Cup. There should be some level of resentment from the Maple Leafs to Mitch Marner. I know that they look at it the way that players do, where they go, hey, you know, this is a business. Like if I worked with Ennis and he got a hyper-competitive offer to go to another network and he left while we were doing a show together, neither of us would have like begrudged the other. So I understand that
but you would want your show to do better than his.
Exactly where I was going with it.
Human.
I would want to beat his brains in when it comes to what the show looked like. And I would want some small part of him to be thinking constantly, man, I did have it pretty good. And I do miss those days. And I did leave the show. So I want to see that from the Leafs tonight. I really don't think that's unreasonable for them to be thinking that way, which is this guy did not want to play on our hockey team. And the team was going to offer him and did offer him a significant amount of money. They did not try to lowball him. They did not try to get him to go in on some stupid hometown discount contract. They were coming at him with real money.
They offered him probably too much money that would have pissed a lot of people off. I agree. And I think, we live in a funny time where you can't say anything without qualifying it by being like, I don't expect them to hate each other and never speak again. But I also think just from the standpoint of like, what have the core four, the Matthews and Nylander and Tavares and Riley to some extent, if you want to throw him in there, been accused of over and over and over again for a decade is being soft, And so this is a different way to go out and not have to go get in fights or try to be physical or play in a way that doesn't work for you. But it is an opportunity to be like, actually, we're not soft. We are actually pretty tough. And this guy left us, and we're going to show him what a mistake he made by actually playing hard against him and not doing this whole like, oh my gosh, you guys don't understand. It's like, you guys are on the outside. You don't really, and by you, I mean like the fans and the media, and like, you guys are too harsh. You expect too much. And all of these narratives that we come up with for a reason as to why a professional athlete shouldn't be as competitive as humanly effing possible, no matter who's on the other side of the ice. So I think that there's the Rantanen comparison, which I think is a good one. But on another level, it's like, Matthews, you've been accused of being soft for a decade. This is a chance in a very micro way to show that you're not. Go out there, play mean, have passion, be intense, show that you want to beat this guy who was supposed to reach the mountaintop with you. And when the going got really tough, said peace. Good luck. I'm going to go take my talents to Vegas where it's not going to be as hard for me. I'm not going to have to play as much of a role. They've already won a Stanley Cup, so there's like proof of concept that a certain chunk of that team can do it, that the coach can do it. Bye. I know we're boys, and we've been in this together, the two of them especially, for 10 years or 9 years, whatever. But I'm going to be the one to leave. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I do think it is an opportunity to show that you're not that soft. And I love the way that Matthews has been playing. So like, let's take it up another notch. Let's get more intense. Let's not be like shooting the shit on first base, like this isn't what we're doing. It's especially the way this season has gone for the Leafs. Like they actually really, really need the 2 points.
They
do. Let's that's why I didn't like Chiefs comments the other night. I know it was a tough spot for Toronto, but the whole like, oh, I'm flushing this game or whatever. I'm like, you actually can't afford to flush games right now. You desperately need every single point, and then you need other teams to lose some games. So I don't know, maybe don't flush things. Maybe everything's important.
I do think they get the benefit of the doubt to have that burn the tape game against Utah because you are in a back-to-back and you just did beat Colorado in overtime. You needed Matthews to play an extreme amount of minutes.
Sure.
And like if there was ever a time where I would forgive a team for looking ahead to one based on what I'm asking them to do tonight, it would be that Utah
sandwich.
Game.
You're right.
Yeah,
the sandwich. It's in the middle of the sandwich.
Yeah,
sure.
You were in a really tough spot. What I would say is if they lay an egg in this game, they're rightfully going to get crushed for it. And people are going to start. This is what I've kind of maintained all along. They were always going to need a stretch like this to change the perception around the team. But because of the way that they played, there's always going to be people who are looking for cracks and flaws and dips and say, hey, did they just get hot? Because we've seen them get hot before. And to me, like that's why tonight matters even more, is because you are coming off of this great streak. And tonight is an opportunity that on your road trip where you kind of need 6 points, you need this game. So not only do you need it in the standings, but you need to be able to show not just to people, but to yourselves that there is a different makeup to your group when there is a big moment game where there is a lot of pressure on you, and understand that, but also embrace it. Go out there and play an extremely tough hockey game where you win and you get 2 points and you look like the better team than Vegas. The best revenge is living well, and Toronto's best revenge with him can look like a team that is better than Vegas when it comes to an opportunity to win a cup. You don't get to settle that today, but you can at least plant that seed of doubt.
Yeah, and I love the way you frame too, like embracing the pressure, embracing the challenge of the game and all that it comes with, because nobody is saying that this is easy for parties on either side. Like it's hard. It's hard. Marner made a huge decision that he may one day regret, he may not. He doesn't know. He made the decision not knowing how it plays out. And for Austin Matthews and the Toronto Maple Leafs, this is a huge season for them, and it's going to determine what the next few years looks like for a lot of the big name players on that team and for the organization itself. And I think that, from a bigger picture standpoint, it's the narrative for me and the way I'm looking at this hot stretch for the Toronto Maple Leafs over the last 10 games and the way that they've played and what does it mean? Is it real? Is it smoke and mirrors? Are they going to fall off? Can they keep it going? It's just, will this be a different season where when the playoffs come, should the Leafs make it, do they have to flip a switch, or have they been playing the way that they need to all season long because it's harder? Nothing's being given to them. There's no stretches of the season where things are a cakewalk and their playoff spot isn't in question and they've already, won their division, or they already know who their first round matchup is going to be. The season is so different in so many ways. And I think the hopeful part of me as a Leafs fan, and the hopeful part for a lot of the fan base, is that this, especially going into the season, was that this regular season would be harder, that nothing would be given. Everything would have to be earned. Everything would be harder. Everything would require more fight, more intensity, more mental strength to accomplish a playoff spot because the team is not as skilled offensively. Duh. But I think the problem with Toronto in years past, and we've seen it with other really good teams, I think that The Tampa Bay Lightning in 2019 are almost a perfect example of a team that had a pretty, I don't want to say easy because nothing is easy at that level, but they had a pretty, they tied the regular season record. They didn't face that much adversity. They didn't have to really fight through a lot of pressure or high
Mhm.
stakes games. And then when the postseason comes, they're swept by the Blue Jackets because they had to flip that switch and play at a different intensity and a different level and a different mental realm. And I think for the Leafs, that's definitely been to their detriment in the past, where, they've always had a playoff spot locked up by this point in the year. They haven't had to battle through that much in the regular season. And then the playoffs come and they don't know how to go from here to here. They don't know how to flip that switch quickly, anyways. And I think this year is a great opportunity for them to embrace the fact that things aren't easy, embrace the fact that the team is not as good and won't be as good no matter what they do at the deadline. This team will not be as good from a skill offensive standpoint as we've seen in the past, but it can be maybe closer to more complete. It can be a team that has that intangible thing that we can't really describe, where they find something within themselves that kind of defies the odds, that kind of helps them win a series that they shouldn't. Like the Columbus Blue Jackets should have never
Mhm.
defeated the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2019 in the first round. And they didn't just beat them, they swept them. So it's like nobody can tell me like, oh, well, the roster's not good enough to win. Any roster is good enough to win if they play the right way and they do the right things and they catch a couple breaks. So this is, I guess, my long-winded way of saying that this is hopefully a year for Toronto where there isn't a switch. They're already in it. They're in the trenches. They're in the battle all season long.
Mhm.
And there's maybe like a fatigue element that comes with that if you go deep in the playoffs. But we just want to see this team like get through a couple rounds. We want to see them do, like, I don't know that everyone's like, this is a cup contending Toronto Maple Leafs team.
Mm.
But once you're in, who knows? So I hope that they embrace tonight, but I also hope from the larger standpoint that Matthews and everybody else on this team is embracing the challenge that is not being a top dog in the conference or in the NHL. You're not. So what are you going to do about it? How are you going to play? How are you going to approach every single game and every little mini challenge that comes along? And tonight, maybe I'm being dramatic about it, but like that's who I am also. So like if you're surprised, like you obviously don't watch me or pay attention to my content
Yeah,
because
but
this
that's
is
what
who
I
I am.
wanted. That's why I wanted you on today, is because I
Yeah.
do know that your passion for the team and for the product is very real. And I think that there's actually a lot of good stuff there, particularly when I'm thinking about them having to rise to an occasion, which tonight is. They've always played
Yeah.
it cool, right? That's been the way they operate. When it's playoff games and when it's big pressure moments, it's a lot of the like, and I'm sorry, but I think about Nylander in particular, where his attitude towards it has always been like, uh, when they lost, remember was that they lost 4 games in a row, I think. He
Yeah.
said, "What's the big deal?" And then they
Yeah.
turned it around and it worked for them. And people were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, he was
Yeah.
right. What is the big deal?" But given where they're at in the standings this season, the place that they put themselves in with the slow start, and given the fact that you did mention they don't have as much skill up top, and there are question marks in terms of guys that are going to provide for them over the course of a regular season, whether or not they can actually add at a deadline, given their limited number of assets in the cupboards, that maybe you have to try things a bit of a different way. And that's why tonight matters. It's not everything. It's not. But what it is it's an opportunity to continuously show that there is something different about you. Over this stretch, the thing that has looked different is Matthews' play from the beginning of the
Yeah.
season to now, but also the depth and the way that this team looks like they get along and the way that they compete. So if you're going to be,
And
yeah,
And I also think the coach's willingness
to adjust.
to adjust and to just like do different things, not just like in a game sense when things aren't going well and it's like, oh, I'm gonna mix it up because we're down. Like actually consciously going
Well,
into
yeah, they
situations and
fired someone.
games. Yeah, well, yeah. There's also that.
Yeah,
There's also that,
yeah.
which it's not lost, I don't think, on anybody that has sort of been part
Mhm.
of what maybe has catapulted this run for them because the two things coincide. So I don't think that that's coincidence. I think that there is a bit of a reaction from the players themselves to that happening, even though at the time I was like, so it's one guy's fault. Like
Mhm.
that's what we're doing. But it's clearly had somewhat of an impact in some way on the way that the team is playing in
Yeah,
certain areas
I
of the
I
game.
just I just wanna see them look very much like the team that we have seen over the last couple of weeks, where they're rolling 4 lines, they're getting contributions down the lineup, Matthews is dominating, and that they're playing with an edge. And just that you're not asking them to chase Mitch Marner around the ice all night. I don't need Max Domi and a circus
No,
with Mitch Marner. What
that would
I
actually be really bad if
Yeah, it
if they went too far that way and then
but I
you're
don't
just
think they will.
watching. I don't think they will
I
either,
think
but
that's actually
that's
like
like a
the
nightmare scenario for
but I
me.
also
Like
think
I don't
that's
want to see
actually the
that.
least likely of all the outcomes. To me, all you really wanna have is one little moment where they're getting physical with one another and Marner looks up and says something because he's like a "What the hell was that?" kinda thing. You know, just like a
Yeah.
little bit of a greasy moment where it looks as though you have set a tone that, yeah, when you're out here, your heated rivalry analogy where
Yes. Thank
hey, we
you.
might have been besties or lovers off the ice, but on it, we hate each other. It's a heated
Yeah.
rivalry.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think too, it's like, we talk about like, oh, it's not how it was 20 years ago where guys are, hating each other and they won't speak and all of this stuff. Like I often think about like Darcy Tucker wouldn't stand for this. You know what I mean? Like I
Mm.
think about those types of players or like Shane Corsons of the world, like wouldn't stand for the niceties right before a game with a former teammate. But I think that if Brady and Matthew Kachuk can be yelling at each other to the point of almost fighting in a game, then there's no reason why there can't be words exchanged between Mitch Marner and somebody else if things get heated in front of the net or something happens in a game that organically creates that situation, not something where you're trying to manufacture, some sort of heat with Marner. But
Yeah, you don't
if
have to
the
manufacture
game
it.
leads there,
Yeah.
and it should, because Vegas is a really good team. The Leafs have been playing very well, save
Mhm.
for the other night. There's going to be moments, right? So if something gets heated or intense in the corner, in front of the net, wherever it might be, that's something that I think we want to see from Toronto and see from Marner too. Like how has the last 6 months changed Mitch Marner? That's a
Mhm.
huge both of these seasons are so fascinating and they will be maybe even more so in hindsight in the fact that Marner made a massive decision and left to a team that should contend, and he has an opportunity to grow as a player, to evolve, to kind of maybe take a little bit more accountability for his game. And Matthews, like this is a legacy season for me with Austin Matthews, because when he wasn't playing well at the start of the year, there were two major talking points. The first was like, well, what's wrong with him? He's obviously injured. What is it? What is it? What is it? And why hasn't it been dealt with properly? But the second was, how much was Marner impacting Matthews at his best? Like, how
Yeah.
much did Marner have to do with that? And if Matthews hadn't been playing well the last couple of weeks, that narrative would still be bubbling under the surface, right? Bubbling under the surface. How much of an impact did Marner have? Did Matthews need Mitch Marner more than Marner needed Matthews? Like, these are all the things that we do in media, and rightfully so. So I don't want to hear it. But like for Matthews, it's an opportunity to prove that, like, no,
Mhm.
actually, I can be a hero on this team with or without Mitch Marner. I can play with anyone too. Because those are a lot of the things I'm seeing as well. It's like, oh, Mitch Marner is proving that like he can make the players around him better and he can do this. And they're very different players. So I think that that path comes a little more naturally to the style of game that Marner plays. But I think for Matthews, everything about this season is legacy defining for me. And it actually doesn't really have anything to do with the Sundin record and everything to do with what he actually does between October and June of this year and also at the Olympics. Everything is huge for Matthews this season. He can use it to catapult himself back to being, is this going to be the best American born player ever?
Mhm.
Or we can go into another season next year questioning like, what is Austin Matthews? What's happening to Austin Matthews and why? So, yeah, big season for 34.
So
Massive.
I think all of that is correct. And what I would say is, of course, Huge goals in the playoffs would matter more than anything, but you've got to be able to get there. Huge goals for the United States at the Olympics would matter for a legacy season. But what do you think people will remember more? Him scoring 2 goals in the second period against the New York Islanders to pass Matt Sundin, or if he scores 2 goals tonight against the Vegas Golden Knights and helps them secure 2 points? It's a no-brainer.
Yep.
It's a no-brainer. Tonight
I
is one
agree.
of those nights where he gets to put a stamp down and people get to talk about it in a positive way. And if you're them, one of the biggest things that you should be wanting is that the vibe of the team feels very different right now. And you do have a lot of people looking at it going, oh, yeah, maybe we were wrong about you guys. The last thing you want is to return home, not empty-handed because you have the Colorado win, but to
Yeah.
lose tonight to Vegas, to not look like you really had it. Maybe you grab the win against Winnipeg on Saturday night, but then you return home and you ended up with a split on the road and nothing really conclusive and people with a sour taste in their mouth that you couldn't get the Vegas game. When they were on a back-to-back and you got an extra night's rest, by the way.
Yeah, a couple of things like come to mind there, which is that it does feel like for the first time in a really long time, the Leafs are they're having fun, like as a team, not one guy who's on a hot stretch. Like I always feel like William Nylander is like mostly having a good time, but like as an actual unit, as a collective, like one, it feels like maybe this team is more threaded than it has been in a very long time from
Mhm.
top to bottom, not just like a core four and everybody else, or not just one line that is like having some success. And it's not just like, Marner doing the gritty or whatever the hell it was that he was doing there for a while. It's like actual, like it's like subtle things where you go, oh man, like these guys like each other. Like
Mhm.
these guys are having a bit of a time right now. Like they're feeling it. They're feeling like they're feeling vibey, and I think that that's been part of the fun of the last stretch is that not just that they're winning, but they've been like enjoyable. There's been like a different sort of tone coming off of them, even when you're just watching at home. And then the other thing, and we've talked about this before as well, but I've kind of made a point to bring it up when I'm at different games and talking to different people that cover the league or are in the league or, front office people, whatever, is just in talking about Matthews and his legacy to this point. And you can never take away like the 60 goal seasons and the things that he's won individually and all of that. You can never take that away. But when you go, okay, what are Austin Matthews' 3 biggest moments, like impactful moments where you go, oh man, that was so good. The first thing everyone says, I haven't had one person say anything else as the instinct response, which is the 4-goal first game.
Mhm.
That's a long time ago.
Mhm.
That is a long time ago. So I agree with you. I think that it is a no-brainer what people will remember more. And to take it even further, it's if the Leafs are able to make the playoffs, what will Austin Matthews do? What moment will he have? What moment will he create? William Nylander has had more moments, I think, in the postseason than Austin Matthews has. And so I think it's important that he continues down this road and gains that confidence without Mitch Marner and with a team that we all agree he's not working with as much as he has in the past to go and create those moments and to prove that he is that guy.
Mhm.
Because right now, and he was sheltered from this narrative for a long time because of Mitch Marner. I always do give Marner
Totally.
credit for that. He took way more heat than Matthews, undeservedly so. So I hope the best for Austin Matthews. I don't want this to seem like I'm like coming down on him. I want to see that. As a fan, I hope that we get there because that's what I always envisioned was that this would be the guy that led us to like really good times. It
I
hasn't
think
happened yet,
I think where
but
we've come to essentially is kind of what I was leading with, which is as much as tonight is about Mitch Marner, it is equally about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And there is an
yeah.
oversized import tonight, especially for Austin Matthews more than any other player on this roster. We got
Can
to
I
go.
ask you a question?
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
I wanted to ask you a question really quick
Yeah, ask
because
it.
you are like the number one person I think of when a Toronto Maple Leaf, but Mitch Marner especially gives a bad quote.
Mhm.
Like you are the first, I'm like, JD is going to have a field day with this. And I know you saw the Marner article from, yeah, I think it was yesterday that came out.
Mhm.
And a lot of people had a problem with this quote about like, I only root for my own team. Like I root for the team I'm on. And people didn't like that.
Why? I didn't
I
actually see any
actually
backlash to that, but that's stupid. Of course you only root
so
for the team
I
you're on.
saw that people didn't like that he should have been more what, and I'm like, this is like the one time that I actually think Marner is
Oh.
like being authentic and it's good. Like this is, yeah, of course.
Yeah, no,
Course.
that's an obvious. I would absolutely not criticize him for that. Marner's just not an articulate guy. He's not comfortable in front of a microphone. I saw
agree.
like if you want to do this, he had a quote where he was asked about. So Anna Duo tweeted it. He was asked about Matthews passing Sundin,
Yeah.
and he kind of rambled on. He went, "Now he's among the greats," and he went, "Well, now he's actually
And he's
passed it.
above them.
He's above
He's
them." And then he
above,
goes,
above.
and
Horrible word to
I
use.
texted him, and I think people saw that I had a message to him, and I went, "No, he saw, and nobody cared. Like, I don't remember that being a thing."
I think he said everyone saw.
Yeah, everyone saw that, and I went, you know, I'm over that kind of stuff with him just because he sucks speaking. He cannot do it. It's not in his repertoire. As the kids say, it's not in his bag. Is standing in front of a microphone and delivering words. He just cannot do it. It's gobbledygook. It's always something where
not the gobbledygook.
Well, what was the one
That's
thing
crazy.
he said? Trying to put shambles in our brains. Like,
Oh yeah,
that's
that
him.
was an all-timer.
I know,
for
but
me.
that's-
that was worse than the Gods quote.
But
I was like, "Ooh, you're making yourself look dumb."
but that's
right
it. Is
now.
every single time he does it, it's a shambles. So I really don't care about that element of it because not everyone's a public speaker. It's important to be reminded when we do this job that some people's greatest fear is public speaking. A lot of people's greatest fear
Yeah.
is public speaking. And so maybe that's just kind of who he is. So I'm a little bit more forgiving of that. What always bothered me was his inability to speak on what the Maple Leafs meant to him as someone who grew up a Maple Leafs fan and lived here, because that should just roll off the tongue. Like if you ask
Yeah.
me or anybody, not just me, because again, I speak for a living, but if I go up to someone who is passionate about their life's work and I ask them what it is they love about what they do, I expect even the most inarticulate person to be able to communicate somewhat for me to understand, oh, wow, like I really see your love of this thing, and he couldn't do it, and I hated that, but the other stuff, whatever. Okay, we
Yeah.
got to go. We really got to go. But I got to squeeze
Okay.
this in. Yesterday, in honor of Mitch Marner, Ennis and I did a segment of things we hate because we
Okay.
believe that most Maple Leafs fans now hate Mitch Marner. You got 2 minutes. What's something that you hate?
Okay, I would like to say that I got short notice that we were doing this, but
Oh,
I did
wow.
make a
Throw
quick.
me under
I
the
made.
bus. That's
Yeah.
you know what
that
I
could be
hate?
a thing that
You know what I hate? People who
throwing
make
you under the bus.
excuses.
No excuses. Play like a champion. Okay. This is the first thing. Like the whole 6-7. Like we got to stop. It's over. Old people are doing it.
Okay,
it's not
boomer.
funny.
Yeah.
It's not funny. Tip. This one. I feel like I'll get a little backlash on. We have too many tip machines everywhere. I'm not tipping you for grabbing me a muffin out of the case. Like I'm not doing it. I think it's too much.
Wow.
Voicemails. I hate voicemails. There's, to quote Ilya Rozanov on Heated Ravelry. Hi, this is Ilya. I will never listen to your voicemail. Like that is me. Never listening.
I actually like leaving voicemails, but short ones that are just insults because I don't think people listen to them. And when they do,
that's incredible.
yeah, like I'm a voice note leaver, but only to a select group of people. But yeah, I'll leave like a really short jab.
To be clear, I hate voicemails. I like voice notes.
Yeah, voice notes are incredible.
Voice notes are great.
Yeah.
People who don't put weights away at the gym, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's
why are
really
you
tough.
leaving your
or
weights
wipe
on
down
the floor?
machines.
That too, or like leaving your weight on the leg press or leaving your weight on the bench. Like other people don't lift what you lift. Like this is not your gym. This is everyone's gym.
Mm-hmm.
Pick up your shit. I actually, it infuriates me. I've actually told people to pick up their weights before. I'm not going to lie. Like, can you actually not leave your dumbbells on the floor? Thanks. Expected goals against for skaters.
Okay.
I hate that stat. I absolutely hate it. I think that it's meaningless. I think that it's stupid. And I hate when people use it to say that someone is a bad defensive player when it's like goals against in a lot of ways. Like it matters for a goalie, but when you go and take a defenseman and go, oh, his 5-on-5 expected goals against. There's literally a million factors that happen for every goal against. So I hate that. That's my hockey one, is that I hate that one.
Okay, it was a good
I hate
list.
that stat.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have referenced a couple of things on that list. Certainly the tipping stuff.
Oh, sidewalk hogs. Also,
Yeah.
why are we walking 4 across
Yeah.
on a
I don't like that
sidewalk? Like
either.
I actually, my
Or a person who
blood,
walks in the middle.
blood boiling. Like I actually have to take deep breaths because I'm so infuriated. And I've said this on your show before, but it bears repeating. On the plane, when you go to get your bag and someone that's in a row behind you is like trying to like brush past you and they're rude to you, like you're doing it wrong. Like, no, sir. You are doing it wrong. And I am actually so done with this that I haven't yet because I haven't had the balls, but I think I need to start saying something because it's too many people.
I say stuff.
What do you say? Here's the thing. What do you say?
I say, hey, what are you in a rush for? I've had only 2 interactions that are like this. One time, I said something along the lines of, why are you rushing? Like they're not opening the door early because you stood up earlier. And then the other time I just said, hey, can you step back? Like I'm in the row in front of you. And then he started rambling about a connection flight. And I was like, we would all get off this plane faster if everybody just followed the rules and didn't start rushing. Anyway, we got to go, Jackie. We got to go.
I know. I'm sorry.
You gotta go.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I like how you're like, I'm ill prepared. And then you rambled off 25 different things that you hate. So you threw me under the bus. You made an excuse, and then you still delivered 8 things. Anyways,
and hey, front to back, to back. That is how a plane empties. Goodbye.
Correct. Jackie Redmond. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. All right, quick break. We'll come back, and I want to talk about Harbaugh. So according to Adam Schefter, John Harbaugh is off the market. I don't think we have the details of the contract, at least last I saw. But he and the New York Giants are expected to finalize a deal, and it's according to multiple sources. So Harbaugh to the Giants. If I'm a Giants fan, I'm pretty excited. There's certainly questions about hiring older coaches who are culture setter coaches. You saw this with Pete Carroll going to the Las Vegas Raiders. And granted, he was, I believe, a full decade at least older than Harbaugh is. So you wonder when you're hiring a guy like that, how long it's going to be till you can instill that. But also whether or not, the players are going to buy into the idea that this guy's going to be around for a very long time. I think Harbaugh is still young enough. I think he's 61 years old. You could easily see him coaching another decade. And that there are some teams that need this more than others, in my opinion, where I think it can work. And for Harbaugh, to me, this was the right decision. What makes this now extremely interesting is he was clearly the top choice for everybody involved. And now there are so many teams that are desperate for head coaches. And I still think that maybe it's not on the table for the Bills anymore. I don't know. I would imagine that it's not. But that, I think that there are some scenarios where some other teams would move off. The strange one is Miami, because it felt like they fired their coach to hire this guy. And now they've missed out on another Harbaugh. And I'm very curious to see what the Dolphins are thinking in terms of a secondary plan. But if I'm a Giants fan, I'm pumped up about this. If I'm a Dolphins fan, I'm a little annoyed because you needed that culture setter. I thought those were the 2 destinations that made the most sense. And now you're going to see a coaching pool where I think a bunch of the guys that are in the playoffs right now as offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators are very likely to get poached by other teams. Anyways, it is Leafs game day, which means that you can score a Popeyes chicken sandwich for only $6 in classic or spicy. Make it your new game day tradition. Get your $6 chicken sandwich at a Popeyes near you. Quick break. We'll come back, and we've got Nick Kypreos. Kyle Tucker watch continues. Please, Kyle Tucker, sign with the Toronto Blue Jays, but also do it in the next hour. God, please, if you're going to sign with the Blue Jays, just do it whenever you want, but not right after I get off the air, not immediately after. Just do me that one simple favor of the second I podcast this show, don't have the entire day turn into Kyle Tucker Day. I guess that's the sacrifice I would be willing to make. Nick Kypreos is making a sacrifice by doing this show ahead of his. He joins me now of Real Kipper and Born. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
Listen, if it's not all about you, then who's it about, right?
Yeah, agree.
I
Totally
get it.
agree. Hey,
I get it.
can I? Do you ever do the like? You got insiders. You do scoops. You ever try to go into other sports? You ever try to use the status to like leak over and do the Schefter thing that he does sometimes with basketball, where you throw out the checks on other sports?
Um,
Yes, that's a yes.
yeah,
That's a
not
yes.
nah.
That's a yes.
Sometimes I got a little insight on the Blue Jays, and then Sammy's like, "Did you talk to somebody at Rogers?" And I'm like, "You'll never know, Sammy. You'll never know."
He just immediately wants you to break the confidence of his sourcing to like for what reason? Well,
Pretty much.
well, the only reason that I can think that he would be asking you those questions is because you love to troll Sammy. That's part of what makes your guys' show great is you throwing out little things that'll drive him nuts and then watching him spiral. It's great. It's good content.
It's yeah. We know how the show works,
Yeah.
right? And we all bring a little something different to
Yeah.
the Real Kipper and Bourne show, and we know where Sammy is on the
Mhm.
highs and the lows
Yeah.
and the roller coaster
Oh
of
yeah.
emotion. And I think people get a kick out of it. I get a kick out of it,
Who
right?
couldn't?
And it's been so much fun, and
Yeah.
I don't necessarily do it on purpose,
Mm.
but it just kind of just
Yeah.
evolves to the point where Sammy's the love of Toronto, the Jays, the Leafs,
Mhm.
obviously. It's been fun for
Yeah.
sure, and sometimes I know he catches himself, but it's okay. It works for us.
Listen, he's the ultimate weather vane. I've said that to him a million times. Like whatever way the wind is blowing, he's
Yeah,
fully in that direction. But I think
and
you have a little
and for
like
the
me.
most part, JD, he kind of has a pulse of what is really
Sure.
out there in the Leaf fan
Sure.
world.
No doubt.
So that as a guy that used to play, or even as a broadcaster, as an ex-player,
Mhm.
sometimes I'm out of touch with it, right?
100%.
On how it touches the fans. We know the fans are out there. They ask for autographs. They buy jerseys. They buy tickets. We get it, but sometimes we do get lost a little bit in their emotional state. And Sammy reminds us of what that is.
Yeah, we were reminded that you signed autographs when we did NHL All-Star Weekend down at that pavilion, and
Yeah.
the people just cruising past me left, right, and center, all to try to get an autograph of from Nick Kypreos. Okay, so the Tucker stuff has taken a little bit away from what is Mitch Marner Day, and I'll just put it this way: what have you been reflecting on primarily as they get set to face off against one another for the first time?
Uh, I don't know. Like in all honesty, JD, and again, this is more of a Sammy conversation and Leaf Nation than it is for me. But out of sight, out of mind, right?
Hmm.
Out of mind, out of sight. Take your pick here, but it just feels like it's. I've moved off of Mitch Marner as a Leaf and what it's meant and all of that, and I'm sure on our show, Sammy will remind us of it all over again. But he's gone on the West Coast. I don't know if I've even watched, four or five. I've watched a couple for
Hmm.
sure. I mean, just out of curiosity and to get a kind of bigger scope out of Mitch Marner on the West Coast and Vegas and what it means. And I've watched enough to know that, he's not playing 24 minutes a night.
Yep.
He's not penalty kill. He's not as needed or as important to Vegas as he was to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they've got more stars there to spread the workload around. But I'm sure we'll reflect more on the show and what it means still to not have Mitch Marner there, and I'm happy to do that. But outside of that, man, I don't know if I've talked about Mitch Marner on our show, 3 or 4 times all season long.
So this is actually one of the most important pieces of the conversation for me, which is this Leafs stretch of play. where they look like a group that has very much come together and played a good brand of hockey for the last 2 weeks. The early wins, I wouldn't really lump into that category. Like, you beat the Ottawa Senators 7-5 in a back and forth affair where you can't really defend. Yeah, right, whatever. That gets thrown into the record. But more specifically, yeah, the last, I would say, 7 games, the Leafs have looked very much like the team people wanted them to coming into this year, which was a more connected group, that their forward lines were going to look like each one of them could come over the boards and actually have an impact. I think you would agree with me in that the body language of the team matters, the way that they interact with one another on the bench, the way that they celebrate one another. Um, the clips that we get from the locker room after the games, it just seems like the weight of the world is off their shoulders, when at one point, when things were going poorly, these guys looked crushed by
Yeah.
the way that they were being spoken about. And if they had not turned it around at this time, people would be having more oversized conversations about Marner and how they blew it losing him.
Yes.
And right
Yes.
now, when I'm coming into this game, what I think is cool about it is there isn't as big of a referendum. Those days will come. I believe that, depending on the success of either side, right? Like, if the Leafs end
Yeah.
up winning a cup without Mitch Marner, Marner will be the one that loses the divorce. If Marner wins and the Leafs continuously lose, people will look at that and say,
Yes.
well, this guy won and they could get it done. So nothing can get decided today. But in the moment, it kind of to me feels like both parties, it didn't work out in the sense of it became ugly and the Leafs only ended up getting Nick Waugh for a guy that's on Team Canada. But it worked out for both sides in terms of it was so very clear that both needed a change. And heading into this game, I'm very curious to see how the stylistic matchups between the two end up playing out in their first matchup against one another, and how much animosity is there.
Yes, no question about that. And just to kind of, back your point up, I do remember when the schedule came out, and I think probably, more so from Sammy, but I'm sure he went on your show a couple times and he talked about how it wasn't built up big enough in terms of the dates that were picked
Yeah, I've
between
been saying
Vegas
that
and the
nonstop.
Leafs. Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point for sure. But more so of that conversation was, will he get booed? Will he get cheered? What kind of reaction would it be? And even back then, I remember telling Sammy that it all depends on where the Leafs are at, and if things are going well for the Leafs and they feel like uh, it's it's a scenario where they don't have to look back and they can still focus on the good things about the team, then they're going to be less apt to boo, right? And if they feel like the Leafs are in an ugly state and it will center around why Mitch left, then there's a better chance of him being booed. So to me, it was all about the state that the Leafs are in. And to your point, right now, it's a much better state, which might be easier to stay in the moment and not look back. But you mentioned the weight of the world off their shoulders right now, and you lose tonight, you lose Saturday night. That
100%.
weight's coming back on.
100%.
Okay, and whether or not, like, the story's not finished here on how much we want to look back on Mitch Marner still.
Correct.
It's still open here. You want to talk to me in March or April if they miss the playoffs, it'll be the number one topic,
Mhm.
right? Where it all derailed, and it will go back to Mitch leaving. But in the meantime, they are playing better. They're playing with more structure. They're making better plays out there, and their captain looks like a guy that is out there leading the way right now. So there's a lot of good things. I wrote in my weekly article with the Toronto Star, that all that's left right now for the goaltender Joseph Wall is to grab the number one job by the throat here. So
Mhm.
as long as now they keep themselves in the mix and they can start putting some distance between them and the mushy middle and start looking at like a team that can compete, if it's going to be Detroit or Montreal or Tampa leading the way in the Atlantic, they're going to have to pull towards them more so than the Buffalo Sabres or even Florida at this point.
Yeah, when I say the weight of the world's off their shoulders, I certainly am not trying to indicate that the job is finished or that they have set the fan base or the media or themselves in a place where they feel as though they've actually like proven something. It's 12% of their season that they've played good hockey. Okay. So yeah, there's definitely no conclusivity that we have learned from this stretch. What I just mean is, given what a pain it can be in this market when things are going poorly and as bad as things looked, and then you compile the injuries into that situation and some of the guys that were taking barbs, the whipping boys in this market, you could tell that every time that they had to address the media, it was becoming really difficult for these guys. We had one game where Matthews didn't even speak to the media. We watched Morgan Riley look like he was completely beaten down by some of the questions at certain moments of the season. We've had the head coach being discussed as to whether or not he's going to keep his job and losing his cool on the bench with his players who looked completely non-responsive at times. And I'm saying that the shift from those moments to now is as drastic as I can remember it being for this hockey team in recent memory. So to your point, I think this game actually does have outsized import in terms of keeping that vibe rolling and not derailing it back to the position where it was before. And maybe they're better as a group where they feel like they can overcome adversity. I'm sure you would agree with this as a former player that they're trying not to make too much of this one game as a defining moment of their season. But from the outside looking in, what I would say is, yes, the 2 points absolutely critically matter. But if you lose this one and you don't look very good against a team that just played last night, where you got the added rest, and it looks a little too overly friendly, this is an opportunity for you as a team. Measuring stick games always get blown out of proportion because we look back at the end of the season, like all those Leafs-Bruins games where like, gotta beat the Bruins. And then you play in the playoffs and they win and you go, oh yeah, I guess that didn't matter on February 3rd when they played the Boston Bruins. This one actually, to me, is a stress test for this group where there's a lot of eyeballs on them. There's a lot of people who care, and you need the 2 points. This one matters more to me. It does. And I hope that it matters more to the players. Do you think it should?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. And I hope they're feeling it going in tonight.
Same.
And I said on my show the other day with the boys there, I hated that scheduled loss comment. And I do believe that you could sit there and you could have come up with those type of conclusions after the game, but to me, it was not a good loss at all or a scheduled loss. It was one of those that kind of reminded you of the first 30 plus games in Utah. And they have to go into Vegas tonight and they got to stop that bleeding of all the matrix or the analytics that suggested that the ice was tilted against Utah. And there is no time now to go from those type of stretches where you need a week and a half to figure it out. You got to figure it out in 48 hours off of Utah. I wish the Leafs came in tonight with better momentum off of a Colorado game. And, can they erase that? Can they just flush it like Craig Berube said? We'll find out tonight. And if they do, then I think we're still on the way of saying that they're going to take a run at this thing legitimately, and hopefully the timing sets well that they're playing when it matters most in the back half of this season. But yeah, tonight's another measuring stick, and it's another one that says that are we more to believe on the first 30 games, or are we more to believe what we've seen in the last week and a half, 2 weeks? So we'll see it in the first 10 minutes.
Totally. So what I would say is, as impressive as the stretch has been, something should be said about when everyone is writing you off and you're in the bottom of the standings, there actually isn't as much pressure on you because you can go out and no one's really expecting anything of you. And you have that collective groupthink of nobody believes in us, which is very powerful for athletes. Right now, people are starting to believe in you again. And this is a game against someone that the fan base adamantly wants you to beat. And they want you to do it in a way that is convincing, a way that shows a tenacious group that we have seen pieces of over the last couple of weeks. And what is the question with this team been over the last 9 seasons? Is it, Can they play good regular season games and put together their stretches where they get points? Like, no, that's actually not all that materially different when you think about it to what they've done over the last couple of weeks. The real question is, what happens when you face adversity and real pressure? And that's why I think tonight's measuring stick matters more, is that, and probably the one in Toronto more so because it's your own fans and it's in your building, even though you've got a great home record. But a game like this, I'm hoping that there is some understanding within the organization and it permeates through the players that everyone's really going to care about this one and everyone's going to extrapolate more meaning from this. That pressure is real on us. Let's go out and prove to people that the pressure does not bother us whatsoever and that we can still play that style of play that we had over the last 2 weeks. That's why the measuring stick matters more to me, is it's because there is the pressure, and that has been the absence for this team in the past.
Well, it's managing expectations. So the narrative 3 weeks ago was everybody was getting written off, right? And that included the lesser likes, like Max Domi, like Marcelli. Brandon Carlo was hurt, but everybody was talking about what a bad trade that was. And, you know, McMahon was not, was nowhere to be found. So now all of a sudden those guys have come to life. There is an expectation now out of all of them to be contributors, less of a feel of team A and team B, more of a feel of one team, 20 plus guys. And there are expectations tonight. And I hope they feel it. I hope they feel it no different that they would feel being down 2-1 in a best of 7 series in the playoffs. These are the repetitions that you need so you're ready in April and May. How you respond. And like I said, 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, right? Get rid of this guy, get rid of this guy. This guy's no good, blow it up, whatever the case is. Now it's a much different feel, especially coming off that Colorado game. And now the expectations are that you're going to go in there and you're going to regroup after a horrific game against Utah, and you are ready to compete. And like I said, maybe we'll know the answer in the first 10 minutes. Maybe we got to wait 40 minutes. Maybe we see it over a complete 60-minute effort tonight. But the expectations and the needle have moved for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I hope the players feel it, because that's when you really learn how to perform.
So the most important thing, we agree, is what is going to happen moving forward, rather than reflecting too much on looking back. But it is the first time that they're playing Mitch Marner, and he is the best Toronto Maple Leaf to leave this team on his own accord. Certainly in the salary cap era, and then, well before that, somebody else can try to find me who they think is better and what circumstance compares to this. But I can't think of one, and I'm, I really do understand the history of this team, and it's something that I have, spent my career working on. If you reflect on it, when do you think was the right time for this organization to move off of Mitch Marner? Like, when you look back, when do you think that time was where they should have done it? Because it's pretty clear that the way it played out was not the right way.
Yeah, they probably should have tried to push hard to trade him before his complete no move kicked in. At that point, if you really understood maybe what was going on with the kid, and really understood whether or not this thing had a chance to be turned around, that's when you would have probably tried to move him. And at that point, my understanding was to JD is that even if they did try to move him, their offers weren't that great. I told the boys, I don't know, last week that I think they did shop him around just to know where the value was, and the best that they could have gotten was Pietrangelo out of Vegas, I think 1-for-1, and you weren't going to do that based on where each guy was at that point of their careers. And Pietrangelo was already had tremendous wear and tear. It wasn't a reality. But in saying that, at that point, you're 7.5, 8 years in. I know Brad Treliving just got there, but that's how you really get ahead of those things, is knowing for sure, or having that gut feel of of whether or not this guy had a chance to be a Maple Leaf the rest of his career,
Yeah,
or he wanted out. But hindsight's 2020, as they
of
say,
course.
and now you just move on. But to me, there was issues throughout his career. Whether or not they were really sensitive to the point where they understood that him leaving was a possibility, or they never believed it. I don't know. You're going to have to ask other people about that. But to me, that's when it really, the decisions really needed to be made, was whether or not you wanted to take one of the core four and move off of them, and it was lined up that it should have been Mitch Marner,
Yep.
just based on where he was with his contract at that point. And Willie and Matthews, looked a lot more surefire things than Mitch did at that point.
Yeah. So for me, I think there's two big what ifs in terms of when they could have traded him. Because to your point, once the no move kicked in, they sealed their fate. And the
Yeah,
idea that they went into that season thinking, well, we could play hardball later in the year and maybe like get out of here with that. That was honestly, looking back on it, Tree Living had no other choice given where they were at with the negotiations, but he had to know that trying to get him to waive for Mikko Rantanen at the deadline in a season where they were sitting first in the Atlantic and he was playing for the Leafs was never going to fly, and his wife was pregnant.
never,
Never.
never.
Like it was a Hail Mary of all Hail Marys. So in hindsight, like 2020, sure, but even going into that, I remember the conversations we were having when he was meeting with Berube ahead of time and going, it's got to be now or never. Because if he locks into the no move, he gets full control. And if your whole argument ahead of time was that you're not going to be able to get anything, like that was kind of going to be even more so for a guy that needed a contract extension. To me, it's two spots. One was right after the Montreal series where they suffered such a devastating defeat and Marner's value was still quite high and there were years left on the term. And it's a question of whether or not they could have moved him for Jack Eichel, who had a ton of question marks when it came to his health at the time. And then the other is, if Kyle Dubas doesn't get fired, do you think that he would have made that move?
Uh, Kyle or anyone else, if Mitch Marner had it in his mind that he just had enough of this marketplace or being the scapegoat, then it wouldn't have mattered who was here. Uh, you really want to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we only got a few minutes here, but if you really go back, there's so many mistakes made over this, including length of term on the contract. That guy, Mitch Marner, should have been on an 8-year deal.
Mm.
Okay, not 6. You would have had Marner for this year and next year before we would have gotten to this point, and you would have stretched out their window to win. And there's just no way that they should have ever got to these guys offering them top 5 salaries in the whole NHL without locking in 8 years.
Mhm.
To me, it was a huge mistake, and one that ultimately cost probably this real shot of competing for a Stanley Cup this year. Now it's about making the playoffs, man. No one's talking Stanley Cup final or Stanley Cup. It's just about making the playoffs. The bars dropped substantially here because Mitch left. So 6 years, making $11 million,
Mm.
biggest mistake.
So for me, it's actually kind of the opposite. Like I feel like there's more pressure for them to win a cup now, given that they have pivoted on the strategy. That like for all the people like myself who said, I don't think that it's going to work with having these guys who are all very similar personality wise
Yeah,
on those kind of big money deals, when you've had this many failures, that it's time to move on. It's time to move on. It's time.
you're not wrong,
Yeah.
but you got rid of them and
Yep.
you didn't replace them,
Yeah.
right? So where's the pressure to win when your team's not as deep as it was last year with him in the lineup?
Well, it's not
You
as
still
deep up
have to
top.
replace him.
It's not as deep up top. It's deeper in terms of the actual lineup. Like we've seen that. That's what you're talking about right now is over this stretch, there's at least some proof of concept that having more. The point I was making the other day is a lot of the teams when they did have Mitch Marner, and granted, flat cap, so there's that element of it that's involved, but they had so many guys, Kip, who were 4A players, right? the kind of guys who were too good for the AHL, but not really great enough for the NHL and weren't really needle movers. So many guys would come over the boards and you were like, ugh, this is a punt. You're just hoping that the puck doesn't go in the net because you need the big four to step back out and create something for you. The difference that I'm seeing right now is just the increase of going to an NHL caliber guy, an NHL caliber third center in Nick Waugh, an NHL caliber fourth center in Scott Lawton, right? Some of these other players who can actually have an impact for them. So now to me, you're like, yeah, there is more. Maybe it's not this year. And you're right. Playoffs come first. I'm not talking about a Stanley Cup until they put themselves in a playoff position. That's pretty foolish to be putting it that way. But in terms of the concept working, there's more pressure for me now than there was even with that group, because now there's added stakes of you better get this right.
The players that you're mentioning are good hockey players and they're serviceable players. But you want to win 4 rounds, you need stars. And I don't know where McMahon's going to be in all of this. We don't know whether or not Max Domi can ride shotgun the rest of the season and be a major contributor in the playoffs. Nick Waugh is a wonderful depth guy, but he's not a top 6 guy. And in most playoff series, we'll still be looking at a defensive role playing 14 minutes a night. Scotty Lawton, is he still at 10 minutes, 11 minutes? Michelli has never played a playoff game in his life, and you want him to come in and be a key contributor. These are big questions here on how you win in the playoffs, but you do win with stars rising to the occasion. Those guys took a lot of heat for not being able to finish Game 6 and Game 7s, and we know how hard it is. But man, oh man, you still have yet to replace Mitch Marner on this team.
And you may never. That's just the reality of the situation. It's very difficult. Even you saw it in free agency with Brad Marchand, the way that it played out. You've seen it in the trade market with their limited assets. So you're going to have to be creative in terms of the ways that you win. Nick Kypreos, again, of Real Kipper and Born. Enjoy the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes. And, yeah, throw out a couple of your little baseball connections throughout the day. Thanks for making time, buddy.
All right, pal. See you, JD.
Here's what I will say. As much as I do think that the organization should be the ones absorbing, honestly, more blame than Mitch Marner. Not for the lack of success because the players play, but in terms of the way that it played out. You did have multiple seasons. Like, you could say after the Montreal year, like I did. You could say after one of the Florida exits. Well, actually, not one of them, because one was the very end. But sure, there were. My point there is, I think the Montreal series is 2021. And from that point forward, there were questions of, is this going to last? When he signed the 6-year deal, it was questions of, is this going to last? Everyone involved knew that no trade was going to kick in. The reason why I think the Duvas thing is relevant is because it really did seem as though with that turmoil and the power struggle that they had up at the top, Shanahan was desperate to just try to get things to settle down. Spezza was leaving. They were going to lose their scouting director. There were factions within the Maple Leafs of this is Dubas's guy, this is Shanahan's guy. And instead of creating a more tumultuous situation, he brought in Brad Treliving and doubled down on the we can and we will. And it became his philosophy more than it became Dubas's in the final year of Mitch Marner. But there were years before that where I think that the blame more centers around their inability to do exactly what Kipper just said, which is, oh, well, the trades weren't there in terms of getting back another player of Mitch Marner's caliber. Well, yeah, obviously. There's only so many guys that play for Team Canada and they're top 6, and Mitch Marner is one of them. He's an unbelievably talented player. That was never the idea. It was, could you replace him with a higher level of talent than you could if you're under the gun like you were with a no-move clause where he was only going to sign a contract with the Vegas Golden Knights and you get back Nick Waugh. So to me, that's the greatest failing in the entire Marner story is the Leafs' paralysis when it came to their creativity in the trade market. Their willingness to budge off of something that just became a stubborn mentality, which was the we can and we will era. Marner deserves blame for his play. The Leafs deserve more blame for the ugly divorce and for the way that they replaced him. I'll always believe that, regardless of what happens or what comes out in the future, because I think we already have most of those details. It is Leafs game day. Score a Popeyes chicken sandwich for only $6 in classic or spicy. Make it your new game day tradition. Get your $6 chicken sandwich at a Popeyes near you. Reach out anytime on Twitter and Instagram. I did get messages from people that are going to the game in Vegas, which was great. And it's like, well, I think I got like 8 messages, but most are in the camp of gonna boo. Most are going for that purpose, and some people are torn on it. I think he's gonna get booed in his building tonight. That would be my guess. Anyways, quick break. We'll come back and hit what we missed. All right, Armin is here. He's got his cool glasses, his cool cap, his cool jacket. Yeah, you got to fit off today.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to stand up.
The guy was not going to be denied being on camera today. There was no shot. If I would have said, Brando, you're up, you would have been like...
I would have been back.
All right, what we missed, dude?
Can we make, first of all, I just want to ask you something. This is like our producing just live on air. Can we make what things you hate a regular segment? What do you think of that?
I've gotten a lot of questions about that.
I think we should, dude.
Maybe, but you can't overdo stuff like that. You got to just know the beats of it. But yeah, I'll tell you right now that if Kyle Tucker signs as a Blue Jay, Ennis and I will just be doing things we like next week. That's for sure. And if he doesn't, it's going to be super sour. Man, this is honestly, I hate this. I really do. I cannot stand every single time I look at Twitter, and I can't stop looking at it, that it's just another variation of the exact same thing we've been getting, which is it's Mets, Dodgers, Blue Jays.
It's getting
and it
to
could
me.
be a thing, and it would be the Blue Jays. It's just, I'm now where I want to just see it or shut up about it. Nobody put out anything else. Just hold the powder. All right? Hold. Nobody needs this anymore. Everybody's stressed who's involved. Congrats if you're not. If you are someone who is able to do the, like, I can't control what I can't control, it's going to happen if it's going to happen, I'm not really thinking about it, congrats to you. Most of us who are addicted to social media and the Toronto Blue Jays are living and dying with all these tweets and have the alerts on, and it's
also, the For You page has made this worse.
Oh, yeah. No, my For You is just that.
So much worse.
Yeah.
Because it's like we're already following all the reporters and stuff. But now every little tidbit, even from fans, whatever it is, comes up. That also goes for the Raptors. Every time I open it, the Raptors are heavily involved in the sweepstakes for Ja Morant or Anthony Davis. And
I gotta
honestly,
say,
that's hurting me more than the Tucker stuff, because at least the Tucker thing is exciting and will actually make our team better. We don't even know if our team is better with Ja or AD. And we look desperate. And Knicks fans are clowning us because we're throwing RJ and IQ out there like little...
no, Knicks fans are clowning us. The team that celebrated the mid-season championship Ariel Helwani bought merch for. Oh, those guys are clowning.
He bought merch, right?
Yeah. Does it? Of all the fan bases to clown you and not be worried about it, it's Knicks.
It's just for the trade thing, right? It's just like, oh,
hey, remember 2019 when the Raptors won a championship, Knicks fans? Something like that you might never know. Yeah, I don't want to hear it from them. Ooh, you won the OG trade. We knew that the second the OG trade happened. All right? It was over the second he got dealt. So any idea that it's not the Luka trade in the sense of the talent, but it's the Luka trade in the sense of day one, we knew who the winner was, and the idea that this needed to be played out. And then once quickly got that contract, it was even more so. It was like, whoa, well, how... That's the deal. That's the money that you're paying for a lottery ticket when OG, certainly with the injuries, there were question marks. But yeah, that was a day one the Raptors lost that trade, man. Oh, like, no doubt.
But when you're star hunting, when your front office is star hunting, you should be excited. I don't think I've seen a single Raptors fan.
But they're
like, everyone's like, please, I'm begging you, don't do this. I don't.
Sure.
It doesn't matter if it's only quickly in a second rounder, let's say for Ja. I'm just making it up. Like, we're not giving up much. At the end of the day, Ja, when he comes here, he thinks he's a star. You think Scotty's going to be like, yeah, Ja, let me tell you how it goes here. I don't know. It might actually be Ja getting Scotty to go to Cactus Club tonight or whatever it is. Anyways, did you see Darko overreact? Did you see Darko's facial expression last night?
Yeah, you're fired up about Raptors today. Yeah, I did see Darko's facial reactions. Darko's.
So you've said I look like him a little.
I think that you, when you get old, will look somewhat like Darko. People looking at this cam right now won't see it, but I see it. There's something there.
Let me tell you why I couldn't for 1 second zag on that and try to be like, no.
Why?
Because when Darko snapped about Scotty and the whistle they got, remember his all-time rant? Scotty's the face of the league.
Face of the league, yeah.
If they want them to win tonight, then just tell us and we won't come.
Yeah.
That rant, I swear to God, gave me flashbacks of my dad being pissed at me when I was a kid.
See, that's what I mean. I know you.
Like, I was like, oh my God, Dad, it just brought me back to those times where I was a troublemaker. My dad would be in my room ready to beat me up. Anyways, Darko doing those facial expressions last night, again, same thing, just the Euro dad vibes, be killing me on Darko. Anyway, sorry.
So,
backtrack.
You guys sent me a text, and I hadn't seen this, that now Shams and who are reporting that AD to Toronto is the...
Shams and Mark Stein are saying, in different verbiage, are both saying the Raptors are still among the top suitors with Atlanta for Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I just... I can't stress this enough. I would be more comfortable signing RJ Barrett to a contract extension than bringing in Davis. Is Davis at his best better than RJ? For sure. To me, it's one of the weirdest things from, again, this is just my vantage point, right? Like I'm not as plugged in, but I feel like RJ Barrett's season has been really underrated. I know he's been hurt. He's been in and out of the lineup, but when he's played, he's felt so critically important to this team. He's been a driver for success. I think about that Charlotte game recently in particular where it looked like they were dead. There was no shot that they come back in that game, and RJ just gave them a different dynamic to their offense, and he has that dog in him.
Exactly. Yep.
I don't like the idea of having IQ, Pirtle, Scotty, and Ingram all tied up to long-term contracts together because I do believe that group has a ceiling. As good as Barnes has been this year, as good as Ingram has been this year, as good as RJ has been this year, I don't think that those three guys absorbing the three biggest cap hits on your team at the rate that they're going to be getting is conducive to building your team in a certain way. The problem is, to me, very clear, which is they're trying to dump the Quickly contract. They want to get off of his $32 million, but the problem remains. If you're the Dallas Mavericks and you're fielding offers for Anthony Davis, if you're getting RJ Barrett, you got to pay RJ Barrett, and it's not a seamless fit. It just isn't. He's a good player. It's not a seamless fit. And the other thing is, you're asking them to take on the Quickly contract, not for 1 year, not for 2 years, not for it's a lengthy, big contract. It's a problem.
Same thing with Pirtle.
And I don't care. I'm taking victory laps on this thing now because I think I'm the only one that said it in the entire market. That the Quickly contract day one, I hated it. I didn't like that. And some people tried to play down the line where they were like, oh, well, it's a couple $1 million too much or more than I expected. It was way more than everybody expected, and the Raptors were bidding against themselves. There was no offer for Emmanuel Quickly. That was the same thing with the Pirtle stuff.
And betting he got better.
Yes. The bet was that he was going to be a star, and I just did not think that he had shown nearly enough to come even close to that dollar figure, and it actually made sense why the Knicks would trade such a fan favorite and throw him in a contract knowing that he was looking for a deal like that. And it's not one of the worst contracts in the NBA because Quickly's a fine player. He's solid. He can have a night where he pours in a ton. He was good last night, granted against the 8-win Pacers, but whatever. He can have a night like that. But in terms of $32 million on that term, in the world where there are luxury taxes that are extremely punitive, it's a hard contract to work around when guys, that's the problem with the new apron stuff. You can pay stars whatever, and you'll get away with it. It's the secondary tier guys that you decide to pay too much money to, and they're your lottery tickets, that kill you. Those are the ones that really damage your basketball team. And Quickly right now is just, he's one of those guys. He's a ceiling limiter for what this group can be. There are other players that make way more sense, who make way less money. And when you're trying to trade them, like, I think it says something pretty significant when you're talking about, I've seen reports of their interest in the Domantas Sabonis trade, and the Kings are going, we don't want to take on Emmanuel Quickley's contract. Like, if the Sacramento Kings are saying they don't want a contract, it's a pretty difficult contract to deal with. But yeah, the AD stuff, I cannot get behind it. He's way too injury prone. Did you see how he hurt his hand?
I was watching it live.
It's the most innocuous contact, and it almost ended his season. And the idea that he's not getting surgery, and there's all these reports out there, that feels so desperate to me, from the Mavericks being like, we need to get off this guy now. And he knows his only shot at getting a contract is to get out of this and go somewhere where he can be healthy for a little while and do. He's trying to do the exact same thing that the Raptors have gotten in trouble with Jakob Poeltl, with Emmanuel Quickley, and with Brandon Ingram. Sorry, like, all three of those guys had leverage in the negotiations with the Raptors because they had acquired them via trade, and they needed to pony up some money in order to make sure that their trade assets didn't go out the door for nothing. There was more pressure on them to do that. So while you get the benefit of getting the guy in the building, that's no doubt about it, a benefit for you. The Raptors have not really used that to their advantage when it's come to the finances of the deal. And the terrifying thing for me with the Anthony Davis stuff is not giving up, Quickley or Baird, who potentially they don't want to re-sign or they don't feel they can re-sign. It's the idea that you are going to bring in Anthony Davis at what, age 32, or is he 33?
Yeah. No, 32 sounds right.
32, and sign him to a contract extension, and now have your team be two guys that are extremely injury prone in Ingram and AD throughout their careers, and saying that this is what it's going to be around Scotty Barnes during his prime, knowing that there could be a lot of games where Scotty Barnes is playing without one of those guys.
And I believe to my core, let's say AD plays every single game. I genuinely don't believe.
No, they need more depth.
That we're better.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry. No,
I think they're
RJ's
better.
downhill penetration is so important. If he's gone, AD, it might look terrible. I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm not. And like,
there's a
you
lot of risk.
See how much Rich Paul is stirring up the drink on his own podcast now?
Mm-hmm.
Do the Raptors want to get in that business too? Like, that's just another like little sprinkle on top.
I don't know who listens to that pod.
I just see the clips, and as a Lakers fan, the For You page knows my ears like there's smoke coming out.
Okay.
I loved Bill Simmons saying it the other day. He's like, if this is making Lakers fans mad, that it was unintended, but I love it.
I didn't hear that, but that is funny that he would create a podcast that would cause real problems for the Lakers fans. All right,
we'll move on. I just want to say it's nice that the front office is like acknowledging that those contracts are bad, but maybe we go one at a time here. Maybe it's not just like dump and go. Like, let's see what this team is. I can't believe we're seeing fans preach patience. That never happens.
Yeah.
Anyways.
All right, we got to go. We only got a minute left, so what do you want to get in?
LeBron patch.
So cringy. Why? Like, it's the weird thing about LeBron is the lack of self-awareness when he seems to be so obsessed with the narrative around him. Like, there's like a dictator quality to LeBron in that regard.
He didn't push for this, JD.
Yeah, you should be pushing against it. Why would you want you? What do you mean you didn't push for this? You think that
Tops? It was like, it's all a money thing. It's for the cards, and
it just. LeBron really does seem obsessed with the way that people talk about him, and he so desperately wants to be called the GOAT. And, he's clearly very thirsty for these things and the accolades when people really do praise LeBron a lot. And I don't think that that's actually absent from who he is.
But also most haters of maybe any athlete.
It's the social media era, man. You're around for 20 plus years, and you're going to have haters. Like, it is what it is. Just accept it. Anyways, we got to go. Hopefully Kyle Tucker's a Blue Jay tomorrow. We'll see you then.